this is one of those things similar to learning substantive skills that if you practice through trial and error, but in a safe way by working on hypothetical clients, then you're going to really be able to swim in the shallow portion and get feedback, right, before going out into the deep end. And that's the way this course works. As you're going through those bite-sized videos, first of all, you start with the general world of AI, what's it about, and then come into how can it be relevant for the legal industry. Now let's learn about how it could be used for non-legal tasks or legal tasks. And then let's start diving in.
Today on LawNext, as generative AI sweeps through the legal profession, lawyers face challenges in learning how to use it responsibly and properly. This summer, one of the world's largest law firms, Orrick, Herrington & Sutcliffe, began to address that challenge by partnering with the legal skills training company AltaClaro to develop a training program for its summer associates on prompt engineering and the responsible use of generative AI. My guest today is Abdi Shayesteh, the founder and CEO of AltaClaro, a company that takes a unique experiential approach to lawyer training. We'll talk about that AI training program and also get an update on the company's growth and development since he was last on this podcast in January 2021, a period during which the company raised a seed financing round of $2.5 million and substantially expanded its menu of course modules. We'll get to all of that in just a moment, but first, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors whose generosity enables us to bring you this podcast. MerisCase is built to specifically assist workers' compensation, employment and labor, and insurance defense firms to effectively manage their practices. From seamless client intake and efficient document management to accurate time tracking and billing, as well as streamlined online payment reconciliation, MerisCase has helped numerous law firms reduce their administrative workload by 70%. Visit meriscase.com today to discover how MerisCase can level up your practice. Now on to my conversation with Abdi Shayesteh. Abdi Shayesteh, welcome back to LawNext.
Well, thank you for having me, Bob. It's a pleasure to be back here again. It's been a while, but lots have happened and great to reconnect with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. You were on this show way back in January of 2021 when we were all still very much in the midst of a lockdown in a much different world. Obviously, a lot has happened in the world since then, and a lot's happened with your company since then. And I want to dive into all of that. But before we do, let me just ask, how have you been for the last 2.5 years since we last talked?
You're right. The time has flown by since January 2021 when we connected. Lots of good things, very grateful. Both on professional and personal. But, as you know, when you're doing a startup, there's no lines between personal and professional. This has been it, and I'm very grateful for it. We've grown and been super busy and still in New York and excited that, things are moving and shaking again. So.
Well, I want to urge listeners to this episode to go back and listen to that January 2021 conversation that we had, because we talked in depth about your background and how you came to start AltaClaro. And it's really a fascinating story that starts way back when you immigrated to the United States from Iran at the age of 8. And by 11 years old, you were actively helping your father manage a cafe in San Diego. And that was just the start of a long entrepreneurial streak that next had you starting a clothing company at age 17 and has continued right through your life leading up to founding of AltaClaro. So I'm not going to go through all of that today, but I really urge listeners to go back and listen to that episode because it's really a fascinating story, and you've accomplished so much and you have such an interesting background. But what I do want to do is talk a little bit more about the company, because obviously there are going to be people listening today who haven't listened to that episode. And so before we kind of talk about what's new and some of what's happened since we talked in that last time, I wonder if we could just start with the basics, which is to have you give us kind of an overview of what it is you do.
Sure. Yeah. AltaClaro is an experiential learning platform for lawyers. And what that means is that all of our courses and programs are designed to get attorneys practice ready. And what we mean by that is that when any attorney goes through any of our classes or programs, they're going to learn by doing. They're going to learn by working on mock deals, mock transactions, mock matters, simulations, and they're going to receive feedback on that simulated work product from our vetted practitioners. It's something I wished I had, and that's where the journey started 20 years ago. As I entered the world of big law and realized I didn't learn anything in law school other than perhaps how to think like a lawyer. And, it was a sink or swim environment. It's a guild that unfortunately has withered away in terms of apprenticeship. So I got lucky that mentors took me under their wing to explain things, and that helped me kind of get going. But I realized that my success depended on luck alone. And not everybody had access to a place where you can practice and make mistakes and get feedback to get confident in your work as an associate. So I had this fantasy as a junior associate, 11 o'clock at night, something was due the next day. And I thought, geez, when you're in college, you have a tutor. And then somehow, some way, you get in the professional world. Where do you go? Where do you go where you can practice, make mistakes, and get feedback? And that kind of stuck with me. And then years later, as a senior lawyer, when I started training associates, I realized how difficult it was because I had to take time away from billing to put together a meaningful program. You can't learn this stuff by watching videos, right? It's like trying to learn how to swim by watching videos. You got to get people in the water, got to get them to apply techniques in the shallow end.
Not like the way I learned to do home repairs on YouTube. That doesn't work.
Yeah, that one, at least you have the hammer and nail next to you, but right, and you can feel the pain of the hammer. But maybe here, you're hoping that there is a place where, because you're dealing with clients, right, and they're not going to pay for your training on their dime, and you also don't want to waste the partner's time. So that this dynamic of putting people through simulations became something that I was obsessed about. And when I was in-house, I would look at, and I moved in-house after being at King & Spalding for many years as a deal lawyer. And I was general counsel at Bank of Tokyo, and I'd received these invoices from the firms, and I had associates spending 10 hours on marking up an NDA. And so I was not going to pay for that. And so I realized this pain is big. And I realized that across the AmLaw 200, people were doing the same thing, putting people in front of videos and passive learning programs, and you didn't work. So they try to put in these internal training programs that were well-intended, but they started to fall through the cracks. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't frequent enough, or you got it right in the New York office, but maybe not in the San Francisco office because people got busy. And so they end up happening as a sink or swim model where you have to, write that time off. The associate spend 10 hours on something, correct the mistakes, mentor the lawyer. And that started the AltaClaro platform, where we run associates through these simulations. They learn by working on assignments and they get feedback, and very grateful for our growth trajectory over the last 4 years. And we service the AmLaw 200, and that's been a great journey.
Certainly, many large law firms have training programs in place, or have had, historically have had training programs in place. But your impression was that they were not highly effective. They were not efficient, kind of a scatter approach to doing it. I mean, is that really what it was?
Yeah, many of these places, their approach to training is, a partner or a senior lawyer just lecturing. And so education science tells us that you're not going to retain much off of a lecture or learn much off of a lecture. Imagine learning how to ride a bike off of a lecture. And so it's PowerPoint slides, and, maybe they get a little bit fancy and pull up some documents, but nothing's about doing. So our goal, and if they create a meaningful program, it takes a lot of time, right? For that senior lawyer to take time away from billing to put together something. Even those lectures take opportunity costs. So our goal is not to replace the internal training or the mentoring, but to help augment it. And so firms today rely on us for the fundamentals of things, what reps and warranties are, what operating provisions are, how these asset purchase agreement things work, and then that creates the space for them, if they want to do something internally, to focus on more advanced stuff or more client nuances of things. But they don't have to start from ground zero and waste their billable time on it. And everybody's sort of at a higher place, especially in the middle of a deal at 11 o'clock at night. They don't have to explain what escrow agreement provisions are and so forth. The associate's there and they can dive right in, and that makes it more efficient for them. So we're helping these firms save a lot of time and money on training, and also their efficiency when it comes to running deals and running matters, which the clients
So
benefit
you're
from.
providing firms with, or you're providing firm associates, I guess, with interactive experiential training. What does that mean? And break it down a little bit more in terms of how it actually works.
Sure. Yeah, there are three pillars in every one of our courses. And today we have over 40 that cut across corporate, M&A, capital markets, real estate, finance, IP, tech transactions, startup law. That's one of the things, Bob, I was going to mention. When you and I talked, I think we had 10 classes. So very, very grateful. But every class has these same three pillars: learn, do, review. At the outset of the associate's learning journey, they're going to watch an hour's worth of pre-recorded bite-sized videos. These are 7 to 10 minute segments. In between the segments, there's a set of assessments and quizzes that test their knowledge along the way, maybe small practical exercises. They're just really learning concepts and principles of things there. And it's self-paced. They do 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes every other day. But when they're done with that hour, the next thing that happens is the most important thing. That's the doing part. That's when inside the portal, they're now going to get a mock client and a mock deal to work on. Here's your client, XYZ company. They're about to engage in this transaction. You're the associate on the matter. Here are the issues, and here are the tasks you need to complete, and here are the documents you need to synthesize. So there might be an email from a client, a term sheet, a due diligence memo, even a precedent form from a hypothetical past deal that you need to go in and find some good provisions to come back and mark up your document. Assignment is all about getting their hands dirty. It shouldn't take them more than 2 hours. It's self-paced, but the goal is to do as much as you can. If you want to take your time, you can. You finish it, then you submit it in the portal for the third part, which is a pre-scheduled live review session with one of our vetted practitioners. And that's when the associates come in, go over the assignment, ask questions, instructor asks them questions, really with the goals of getting to the whys and hows of what they needed to do on that assignment. So it's very interactive along the way. It's not linear. Every step of the way, you're learning more. Not everything in the video is covered in the assignment, and not everything in the model answer to that assignment will be discussed in the session. There's a lot of connecting dots that each step of the way, pedagogically, you build. So that's how the classes work. Yeah.
What's the value of that training? I mean, what have you found? You've been doing this. I think you first launched this and kind of put it out there in 2017. I know you were building the company earlier than that, but you've been doing this for a number of years now. So, I mean, let's start with the associates itself. I mean, what do you kind of hear back from them about whether or not or how this is valuable to them?
Yeah, these classes, the programs, they're not going to make you a rock star overnight, but they're going to help you to get you on your way. And they'll do three things for you based on what we've heard. One, they're going to give you confidence, the confidence to raise your hand, to take on assignments. You get work delegated to you, but it's those moments where you raise your hand, where you shine. So we're creating those moments for associates who take our course and tell us that. The other thing is we're helping them ask the right questions. Right. A lot of times we practice back then. You get that assignment around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it's 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, oh, I should have asked these questions. Right? And so our classes help formulate those questions ahead of time. So now the workflow is more efficient. And then the third thing associates tell us is that we're making their whole thing more efficient. Instead of 10 hours on marking up an NDA, they understand what the document's about. They understand what those provisions are about. They're able to make heads or tails of it and mark it up, at least identify the issues and come up with some solutions. So now they're spending perhaps 3 hours instead of 10 hours. So we're creating efficiency for the firm and the client. But more importantly, we're giving confidence and less stress for this associate, right? And which is an important component of their well-being. And now they're satisfied. And so the firms are telling us their satisfaction ratings have gone up with associates who take our programs. Retention has gone up because either they continue to stay and don't quit after a few years, or now the firm sees that these folks, there's a return on their investment. They are, actually contributing, and they're getting the issues, and they're getting a head start. So, in those early days, you spend a lot of time staring at the screen. You have hesitancy in marking things up. This helps break that glass and help you get it going, because this is, about repetition. Absolutely.
Right. And what kinds of firms are using AltaClaro? And I mean, it sounds like most of what you're doing is going to be corporate transactional based, right? There's not a litigation aspect to it as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong. Assuming that's right. I mean, what kinds of firms, what kinds of practices are using you?
Yeah. So at this point, all of our courses are in the transactional space. We're coming out with some litigation ones next year. As I mentioned, we went from 10, those initial 10 were corporate and M&A. Now we got all these other practice areas. Back then, when you and I talked, we went from 3 clients to 10 clients, and then in the AmLaw 200, and then we went to 20, and now we're over 60 in the AmLaw 200.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And we're covering their practice areas across the firm, but those firms are in the AmLaw 10, the AmLaw 20, the AmLaw 50, the AmLaw 100, and all the way up into the AmLaw 200. But yeah, firms that back in the day, folks told us they would never purchase this stuff because they do things in-house, right? So Scannon is a client, Oric is a client, Hush Blackwell is a client, K&L Gates was one of our first clients. Really proud of the roster of clients that we've built and earned their trust. That's the thing. Our ability to go into these other practice areas have been because we were successful in the first practice area that we started out with. The partner told the other partner and another group, or the associates told the other associates, and the firms came to us and said, "Can you create these courses in these other areas?" And so that's how we've grown. But these are top tier firms that are trusting us, which I'm very grateful for, to train their most prized asset.
So I'm sure that some of these firms, you talk to them and they say, well, Abdi, it sounds very interesting, but what's the ROI for us? And as it happens, you put some effort into studying that, right? I mean, what did you find? What did you do to kind of measure that, and what did you find?
Yeah, so it's a great question because in the early days when AltaClaro was just some scribbles on a piece of paper and a PowerPoint slide, we theorized, right, about where we would help the firms in reducing costs and helping with associate retention and helping with productivity and all these things, right? So we wanted to have an objective analysis around this because we've now been at it for 4 years. Most of our clients have stayed with us. And if there's we've had an NDR of 150%. And the only reason a client hadn't come back, hasn't one or two of them, is because they're in an economic situation and waiting for the next uptick. But 95% of the clients have continued with us for 3 years and continued to grow. So we went to them and we hired a independent consulting firm, Hobson and Company. They're an independent research company. They focus on this economic analysis. So we put them in touch with 8 of our clients that spanned across the AmLaw 200. Some firms in the AmLaw 50 and 100 and 200. So firms like Oric, Hush Blackwell, Holland & Knight, Kirkland & Ellis, Baker, Donaldson, Taft, Bradley, cutting across different attorney counts, right? And ask them these key questions to validate our value proposition. On productivity, how much did we reduce in partner time and getting involved with creating training programs? So they validated 10% reduction in partner time, 2 to 3 hours reduction in partner time spending on direct training, 10% reduction on reviewing and correcting errors by associates. So partners were telling us, these were partners and practice group leaders, that they're finding less errors in the work of the associates who've gone through our programs. And of course, for those folks who organized these training programs, there was a 90% reduction time in their involvement with creating programs. And then we asked questions about profitability. How much less write-offs did you have? And they said, yeah, we're able to now reduce write-offs 1%, 1 to 2% we have an increase in realization rates. And so that's helped us obviously enhance margins and profitability. But we've also been able to get more deals across the firm because we know everybody's had the same level of training. So we're able to staff deals not just on one office. We can go across the firm now. So that was good. And they told us also 2 to 4% improvement in associate retention. Associates have been satisfied, so they validated that they are staying. We were keeping them, and they're telling us that this has helped them. And especially in recruiting, they tell their associates who they're recruiting from law schools how much they invest in training. So this has now been a part of their strategy.
How does that happen in terms of the retention? I mean, is that because that they are feeling more confident about what they're doing, or they're just feeling more valued because the firm is putting more effort into training them and getting them ready? Or
yeah, it's both, right? Because in the sink or swim model, the burnout happens, and then especially in the pandemic, the attention is less, the higher probability of that happening. So having this investment in them reduces the burnout because now they're not spending 10 hours on something, they're spending less time. But also knowing that the firm has their back, giving them the space to go through this training boosts their satisfaction to want to stay more. So as you know, there was a study out about whether people in this generation care more about the money or the training and investment that they get so they can use elsewhere. And it's the latter, and that is the case, where associates are like, I am now learning these skills, whether I stay here for 10 years or 4 years, it's worth staying here at least 4 years. I'm really learning something, it's worth it. So they continue to be, at the firm and utilized.
Until this year, AltaClaro has focused on developing training programs for lawyers in practical skills such as drafting contracts, handling M&A transactions, or closing a commercial loan deal. But when Orrick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe, already an AltaClaro customer, expressed an interest in developing a training for associates in using generative AI, AltaClaro created its first ever technical training course, using the same experiential model it follows in its other courses. After the break, we'll hear from Abdi Shayesteh about how the course developed and what it teaches. But first, please take a moment to learn about some of the sponsors whose generosity supports LawNext. Experience the next generation of legal technology with Paradigm. Its suite of products, Practice Panther, Maris Case, Lally Law, Bill for Time, and Trust Books, offer lawyers the ultimate toolkit for success across various practice areas and business needs. Whether you require native online payment solutions, comprehensive practice management platforms, or robust legal accounting software, Paradigm is the one-stop shop for law firms of all sizes and practices. Discover the Paradigm difference at joinparadigm.com. Welcome back to LawNext. To be successful in their careers and competent in their work, new lawyers need not only legal skills, but also technical skills. This is particularly so as generative AI makes inroads into law, as it requires both unique skills and unique understanding of its capabilities and limits. This summer, Orrick, one of the world's largest law firms, offered its summer associates training in generative AI and prompt engineering, using a course developed for it by the legal training company AltaClaro. As we return to today's show, my guest Abdi Shayesteh, AltaClaro's founder and CEO, describes how the training came to be and what skills it teaches. Let's get back to that conversation. We've all been talking lately about artificial intelligence, obviously, and generative AI and its impact on the legal profession. And you guys have been very much in the news of late for having worked with Orrick to develop a training program for summer associates in, of all things, prompt engineering. That sounds, maybe certainly a little bit out of the norm for what you've been doing. And as far as I know, that Orrick was the first firm to really kind of have any kind of training for associates in prompt engineering. So I'd love to hear from you how that came about, and then talk a little bit more about what it all is.
Absolutely. No, very grateful for our partnership with Orrick. Orrick started out as client number 4 back in the day, and they piloted, one of our classes, and we had great data for them. And they eventually purchased more, and they became one of our largest clients. And then when we were raising capital, as you know, in 2022, we raised from two institutional VCs and one corporate VC. And the institutional VCs, one of them was LearnStart, the backers behind Coursera, and then there was Bryce Catalyst, legal tech VC. But the third investor was Orrick.
$2.5 million you raised is a...
Yeah, very grateful for it, because not only did they invest in a provider, but they became our partner to give us feedback on what they would like the most. And in the first wave of one of the things they told us before the prompt engineering course, they're very client driven. So they had this initiative on a lot of their clients are technology companies. So they said, how about we create a course that has all of our associates across the firm, whether they're litigation or associate, to become acquainted with technology transactions. So we said that's a great idea. And so you're talking about getting everybody acquainted with SaaS agreements and hardware development agreements, software development agreements. Regardless of whether you're a deal lawyer or a litigator, you need to know this stuff if that's your client base, right? So we created this course, and we had almost 200 associates go through the program across the firm, and it was well received. So that was client driven, and it helped them, it helped us. And we since then launched additional courses in that program and offering it to other firms. They came back to us again in June, May, June of this year. Another client driven initiative, because they want to be more efficient for their clients, and they are getting they're just a couple, like other firms, they're prototyping Harvey and Co-Counsel and these AI tools, so they can figure out how to use them and be more efficient in their workflow.
They were the first firm to talk about deploying Harvey firm wide, and
Yeah, they're very innovative, right? And in this, they said, it would be great to have a course that was platform neutral, because of course the vendors will teach you how to use their platform, but there's so many new platforms coming out, to be able to use the AI, the language of how to speak to these tools, and also be practice neutral, whether you're a litigator or a transactional lawyer or even a legal ops professional. You ought to be using these tools, whether it's for legal tasks or non-legal tasks. There is a language that you should learn to use these, and it's going to make your workflow more efficient. So can you create a course, and especially the AltaClaro way, learning by doing, because you can't learn how to use tools by watching videos, right? And we said, yeah, that's what we do, developing courses through this experiential framework, but more importantly, the critical thinking skills that you need, the whys and hows of what you need to do. Same thing applies here when you're learning these tools. So we assembled a team. Julie Ryan, co-founder of the company, who's our chief learning officer. She had already been using AI tools in our workflow when she's creating courses. She's a former partner and worked at Big Law, and she was using these tools to also figure out how it would be relevant in legal practice. And she teaches at Georgetown. She assembled another practitioner who teaches at USC. She's an associate professor of learning skills, as well as a subject matter expert who's an AI tool prompt engineering expert in the video game space. These other verticals, they're ahead of us, right? So we got him involved, and our instructional designer also happens to be using AI tools and at the forefront of all these initiatives. So we had a team of people who've been using it, and also experts who really knew the stuff in terms of being able to create a course just to speak the language, the fundamentals of how to use these tools. So we put in a short amount of time, we put this course together. It's great. In addition, the thing here is to be able to use these tools in a safe way. So, and we realized there are attorneys that are at ground zero with all of this. So
most attorneys are at ground zero with all of this, right? I mean, that's what's kind of interesting about this. Is I think there are a lot of attorneys out there who have no idea that prompt writing is an art as well as a science, and that it can dramatically impact the results you're able to get out of the AI. So, I mean, I guess kudos to Oric and to you for realizing that and for tackling it. But I mean, how do you, without getting technical, I mean, how do you go about that? That's kind of outside the wheelhouse of training how to do an NDA or understand a technical licensing agreement or something like that. How do you teach associates about something like this?
yeah, this is one of those things similar to learning substantive skills, that if you practice through trial and error, but in a safe way, by working on hypothetical clients, then you're going to really be able to swim in the shallow
Yeah.
portion and get feedback, right, before going out into the deep end. And that's the way this course works. As you're going through those bite-sized videos, first of all, you start with the general world of AI. What's it about? And then come into how can it be relevant for the legal industry. Now let's learn about how it could be used for non-legal tasks or legal tasks within our industry, right? And then let's start diving in. Whether you have Chat GPT or another platform, here's a small exercise. Just organize these citations. Can you do it by using Chat GPT or another platform? And so then you oh wow, I see how this was organized. Now let's refine that and now communicate to it this way. So you're refining and prompting at the same time of what you're learning. And then as the course continues, there's this part where you teach them the 8 elements of effective prompting. And through each element, you're going through these small exercises. Draft a settlement agreement using the following prompts. Okay, now what else would you add to refine it, make it better, right? Because if we compare of what the issues were missed and what they prompted, how can we prompt this better to get the result we want, right? So it's through the errors, and then learning about the other limitations. There's, drifting or hallucinations, and actually having them kind of exercise to see what that looks like. They start to learn. And then, of course, we're teaching them about the privacy considerations and other limitations that the tools have. And by the time you come through it, now you've exercised, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to give them an assignment. We're going to give them an assignment, and if you're a deal lawyer, we'll ask them to draft a partnership agreement using a term sheet and ChatGPT or another tool. And if you're a litigator, we'll ask you to put together this research memo. And so they go through this assignment. They do their best with prompting it. They submit it in the portal. Now they come in to that third phase where they meet with a facilitator, an expert, and they go over their answers. And we run these in small groups of no more than 10 participants. And guess what? Everybody has a different answer. And so that becomes really cool in that live session, because people are saying, well, I got this, I got that. And that's an essential part, as you know, of learning, especially this, and understanding why did you get that and why did I get this, and the variances. So that's where you really deepen the learning of it's something like this, where you start to develop the critical thinking skills to be able to play with any platform, at least know where to start, and how to speak the language with these tools.
So it sounds like this is a lot more than just prompt engineering. I mean, it's how this technology works, what the capability, what you can use it for, what you can't use it for, and in that area of what you can use it for, then how to go about using it and how to go about engaging with it.
Exactly. I mean, in this first rollout with Oric, we launched it to 40 of their summer associates. And it was well received. We got feedback, and now we're launching it through the rest of the firm, which is great. And Oric is ahead, as you know, but there are other firms who are catching up. So now we have other firms where it's still the working group, 10, 20, maybe 30 people, and they're taking our course because they're still thinking through the use cases. They're thinking about the policies of the firm. But the course offers them an opportunity to play with it in a safe way. And then now they're able to really understand, especially because they've created these multidisciplinary groups, partner, associate, PD professional, IT executive, and so all of these folks are coming in from where they are different with using these tools. And so for the partner who's at ground -1, as he was saying, not even ground zero, it's a great way to bring him up to speed and not just conceptually understanding this thing, but actually being like, no, I used it. I drafted the settlement agreement through one of your scenarios that we created for them. So now they're able to formulate a plan based on what they learned to deploy through the rest of the
Have
firm.
you taken the prompt engineering course?
Yes, I have.
What did you learn that you didn't know about prompt engineering?
Oh, man. Well, it's interesting because you think you're talking to Google at first, but you're not. You really have to be specific. Then that's the thing. The more specific you are, right? And so you have to think through to get the right answer back. What do you need to put in? And that's where this thing can get tricky. There's a matrix of experienced practitioner using this versus non-experienced, right, in terms of input versus output, what you get. So I enjoyed learning through this course, and I've gone through both the first iteration, now the second iteration. Second iteration's even more exercises in there, but I still have to practice more with it.
So it sounds like from what you were saying earlier in terms of how you develop some of these courses that oftentimes a client will come to you and say, we're interested in having you develop a course around this topic. You develop it, and then you make it available to other customers and other law firms as well. Is that the same with the prompt engineering? Is that now, can other firms come and get that for their own associates?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's happening here. But yeah, our clients give ideas all the time. We ask for ideas on what would be most important for them. And then we assess how it would be relevant for the rest of the market. whether our clients or not. In this case, yeah, and then we create the courses to be universally usable. And so that's what we've done here. It's basically the same framework of how we deliver, but it's another complex subject which we've broken out into simple ways to learn in an experiential way.
Does this lead you to consider developing other experiential courses around other areas of technology, not technology or law, but actual use of technology in law practice?
So that is a great question. We are thinking through our 2024 roadmap, and we certainly have our substantive courses that we have a list of those, but we have these non-substantive but technical course ideas that are on the roster now. If basically there is a framework where we're teaching the fundamentals and it's neutral with platforms, and then we would consider it.
Are you being asked about that at all from your clients? I'm just curious because it's again another area where there's just no training on that in law school for the most part, and it's such a critical aspect of practicing law these days is understanding how to use any not just generative AI but any number of technology platforms.
Yeah, we've received inquiries both from existing and non-existing clients, but we have to kind of. It's one of those things. And part of the challenge or part of the excitement with the prompt engineering course is that there's some firms ahead of others. So you are definitely relevant right now for those who are ahead, and for those who are still thinking their way through, timing has not been perfect. So when it comes to teaching these technology tools, we have to figure out who's using most and right now in order for it to make sense for us too. That's kind of the double-edged sword with it. I would love to, because you're right. They don't teach you this stuff in law school.
It's surprising how little they actually teach us in law school now that when you look back on it. So you mentioned looking at your roadmap for 2024 and beyond, and looking at some of these more practical skills. What else? What else is on that roadmap? What else are you looking to do to help expand the company and what you're offering to law firms?
Yeah, so we're currently looking at also supporting legal professionals outside of practitioners in the firms. And that's where part of the technology conversations come in, but also the substantive. But there are shifts in the marketplace, as you know, in terms of what actual work those legal professionals will do, paralegals and legal assistants and so forth. Paralegals is something we've been asked for, and that we're in some of our existing courses could be very relevant or repurposed for that. And that's where we would try to think is on top of those substantive courses, can we teach some technology related to what they're learning? If they're running due diligence or a closing, where can we infuse some technology learnings there that could be neutral, or at least provide a spectrum of applications to think about? That's one consideration. And our clients have also asked for more advanced topics, which we are thinking of going deeper into some of these, because right now our focus has been years 1 through 3. But we've also been experimenting with learning tools and leveraging AI in the learning process. And so under the radar, I can't talk too much about it, but we are working on some things that would be soon announced, perhaps in later half of Q4 or early Q1. And we're working with some firms to experiment with them as well. But that's something that would be an enhancement to our existing core training programs.
So bringing generative AI somehow into the training programs, is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, leveraging that into the training. So there's one aspect which we're doing now is the training folks on how to use it. But another aspect is how can you leverage, GAI in the learning process and a part of your workflow. Easy example is if you think of if you remember the old paper clip that would show up on your Microsoft Word. Clippy, yeah, exactly. Imagine. I mean, that's an easy one, but there are other things that you can leverage in terms of while you're doing things that they could be a good training opportunity using GAI. Yeah.
What else?
Sounds good.
I've been asking you a bunch of questions here for almost 40 minutes now. Anything else that you'd like listeners to know about the company or what's going on with you these days?
I appreciate the conversation always. I know that you're covering a spectrum of things. Things are happening in our industry. I think it's interesting that our industry is is actually for once taking some, a leadership role with respect to technology. I think the use of GAI in the legal industry is ahead of other verticals, which could be an interesting. Other verticals are still trying to figure it out. We actually are starting to have use cases, and so I think that's a unique opportunity. We're seeing firms, being more open to really kind of talking about the use of technology, and I think that's for us as chasing this for a long time. It's good to see. I think that's good, and one thing is the pedagogy that's important if they're thinking about training. I think sometimes depending on, because now we're talking to new personas, and so if they don't appreciate the building blocks of learning and just go straight to the use cases, that could certainly impede the learning journey. And if there's a do-it-yourself, which we all lawyers say, I figure it out, that actually could end up backfiring on us, because if we learn bad habits with the new tools, then how do you undo that, which some firms have told us that they're concerned about. So yeah, with respect to technology, but that's kind of like on our mind. Yeah. The data that we collect on feedback and engagement and performance has also been very insightful for our clients. That's one thing I forgot to talk about. We have clients now who are able to tell who's performing better than others, and if someone is falling behind,
who have taken the training.
Exactly. We're able to help identify those folks and intervene on those associates that need more support. So that's become very helpful for the data analytics that we provide.
So it's not pass fail, but you're helping mentor and foster these skills where they may be weak.
Exactly. It's not, I mean, there's no grades, and, but it's really just, if you're going through it, you should be learning, but sometimes connecting the dots, just some may fall behind others. And we try to be in a very supportive way to help bring that attention to the firm and find other ways. We can create a private session where that one associate can ask special questions from the instructor, or one-on-one time with them. But yes, our performance analytics has been very helpful to help retain folks as well. Yeah.
Well, you got a lot going on, and congratulations on everything you've accomplished since we last spoke. And like I say, we'll have to reconnect in another year or so and talk about everything you've done since then. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on again today. Good to talk to you.
Appreciate it. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. As always, great to catch up and chat with you.
Always good to see you. My sincere thanks to Abdi Shayesteh for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments on today's show, please do so by tweeting us at LawNext Podcast or by emailing me directly, ambrogi@gmail.com. LawNext is produced, engineered, and edited by Populous Radio. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.